Chairman and board member of the Friends of the Stirling Road Library. And it's great to see all of you joining us tonight. So thank you, and thank you for your support. And of course, because of your support, we are able to have Shelly on board with us, and how thankful are we to have, for this. And thank you, Shelly, for making the time for us and be on board with us. And for anybody who might be here as a first time looking at all the names, I think are all friends, but if anybody is not and would like to become a friend, please check us out at www.stirlingfriends.org. Follow the prompts and join us so that you could take part in all of our programs as well. Now, as far as the programs, because we're dividing up and we're transitioning into in-person to try to make it as easy as possible, check your newsletters that you get every week, and it should be very clear. I'm just going to go over some of the highlights of the in-person ones, which are during the day, and the Zooms at 7 in the evening, like tonight, will still be on Zoom. So there will not really be Zooms during the day, except for one that I will tell you about. Read your newsletter and get all of the information, but to give you a wrap up tomorrow, I'm going to give you the in-person ones first. In the library tomorrow at 1:30 is Linda Levin. Hi, Linda. I see you here tonight. I am so excited that you're joining us. And Linda will be doing the personal librarian. It is our first in-person book club in 2 years, and it will be great. Now, if somebody is here and can't make the in-person and wants to do it on Zoom, the JCC will be doing it Thursday, and you could check it out that way. But basically, I'm only going to do the in-persons, and tomorrow, 1:30, personal librarian with Linda Levin. I hope to see most of you there. In addition to that, Wednesday and Thursday afternoons will be chair yoga and Ageless Grace. Check out the times and join us on that. On Sunday, there was supposed to be a mindfulness lecture in person. It has to be rescheduled, and Rhonda will be putting some information into the chat for anybody who's coming in late, because it is in the newsletter, but it has to be rescheduled. So don't come to the library on Sunday. Rhonda, do you want to add anything to that? No. Okay. Monday at the movies on the 27th, Candy will be doing Saving Mr. Banks. And on the next day, on the 28th at 1:30, we will be having the short story at the library at 1:30. And that is a lot for transitioning back in. And we hope to start getting to connect with the community again, because we've really sort of lost them. And hopefully this will entice them to come back and maybe reinstate their memberships. The Zoom programs on Thursday, Batya will be doing the Impressionism that none of us could get into when she originally did it because of all our technology issues. So she is going to be doing the Impressionism lecture Thursday, June 23rd. Again, Hannah will do her Wednesday nights New Yorkers, and also Emmanuel will be doing her music on the 28th of June, and Shelly will be doing his next, and it will be on July the 11th, called Sweet Beans. So I think I brought you all up to date, and if there are is there anything anybody wants to add? Any membership issues? Any questions about the programs? No. Okay. So at this point then, Shelly, Thank you for being here. I loved Friends. I re-saw it because I saw it when it came out many years ago. And I loved it more the second time. So I hope everybody loved it as much as I did. I thought it was a great movie. So you're going to tell us what I even missed.
Okay.
And mute
Thank you.
everybody on mute, please.
Thank you, Marilyn. It's good to be back. It's nice to see all of you. Yes, Frantz. It is from 2016. It is by a director. His name is Francois Ozon, O-Z-O-N, Francois Ozon, and he has done a good number of films. You can look them up. They're all award winners. He works in all genres. The only thing he's never done is, as he admits, is a blockbuster because he doesn't want to. But his work always reveals subtle interactions and deeper meanings that often go unspoken. And it's very clear in this film as well. The film is based on a film that was done back in 1932 called Broken Lullaby. It was originally a play by Maurice Rostand, the son of Edmond Rostand, who wrote Cyrano de Bergerac. His son was also a playwright. He wrote this as a play. The play was entitled How I Killed a Man. How I Killed a Man, and it was adapted into English by the writer and director Ernst Lubitsch, who was known for his comedies. This was his only drama. And I will at the end tell you how it was changed from the original. Anyway, the first half of the film, as you've seen, is set in Quedlinburg, Germany, the second half in France. A story involving fantasy, memory, lies, guilt, forgiveness, and eventually transformation and resurrection. It is a story of lies and guilt. But the main thing is the healing, what we call the healing lie, or what the director calls the healing lie, how a lie can be either destructive or redemptive. As in the case when the priest tells Anna, when she confesses her own lies, what would the truth bring? Only more pain, only more pain. The film evokes both a beautiful period ambiance and a what you would call a convincing Germanic flavor. It is expressionistic in its tone. It centers on that mourning period that follows any great national tragedy, in this case, World War I, and seen through the eyes of the war's lost generation, the young people who either served in the war, survived the war. Anna, who is a bereft young German woman whose fiancé, Frantz, was killed during trench warfare. And Adrian, a French veteran of the war who shows up mysteriously in her town, placing flowers on Frantz's grave, is a tormented young man. He's lost. He's lost in his desires, lost in his guilt, lost in his family. The trauma of the war has left him powerless. He lacks courage and is languishing in a neurosis he cannot escape. His obsession or seeming love for Frantz has become toxic, and he's wallowing in it. Adrian's presence is also met with resistance by the small community still reeling from Germany's defeat. Yet Anna gradually gets closer to this handsome and melancholy young man. As she learns of his deep friendship with Frantz, what follows is a surprising exploration of how these characters wrestle with their conflicting feelings, their survivor's guilt, anger at one's losses, the overriding desire for happiness despite everything that has come before, and the longing for sexual, romantic, and familial attachments. Ozon drew his inspiration from, as I said, from the 1932 drama, and he also provides a stunning visual references to the paintings of Caspar David Friedrich. He was a 19th century German romantic landscape painter, considered the most important German artist of his generation. And the landscapes in the film that we see are really taken from his artwork. And if you go on and explore Caspar David Friedrich, you will see paintings that almost duplicate what Ozone captures on film. The script is designed as what is known as a Bildungsroman, a coming-of-age story. It takes us not into a world necessarily of dreams or escape, but rather follows Anna's sentimental education and illustrates her disillusionment with reality, lies, and desire in the manner of a rite of passage. This is a journey for Anna. She will delve into all of life's big themes during this journey: death, love, hatred, and everything that comes with it. And as I said, the lie that heals begins with a misunderstanding. For them all to idealize Frantz provides Adrian with a way for him to temporarily assuage his guilt. They all idealize him in some way, and it just powers Adrian's lie to keep going. The film offers so many possibilities and raises so many questions about the true motivations of each of the characters, even the secondary ones, everyone. There are so many beautifully composed scenes. Each is detailed in its evocation of the period, from the costuming to even minor little details. At the beginning, when we first see Anna, she's admiring the dress in the window that will become the one she wears to the ball with Adrian. We are reminded also that it's from France. If you remember, the owner of the dress shop says it's French, and they laugh. We see two veterans gawking at Anna as she passes them on the street. One of them has only one arm, a grim reminder of the war. The gravedigger, who she asks at Frantz's grave who the man was, the mysterious man was, shows her a French coin and spits. Again, another reminder of the animosity of Germany towards France. And then we have Kreutz, Mr. Kreutz, the young man who is a constant reminder of the burgeoning nationalist movement in Germany to reestablish itself and take revenge on France. This is the seeds of what would become National Socialism, what would become Nazism. Even Dr. Hofmeister at first refuses to treat Adrian and finally relents at Anna's requests. We see the use of color as a dramatic element in flashbacks and certain scenes of lying or happiness to suggest that life is bleeding back into the film, into this great period of mourning. As blood runs through veins, color pours over the black and white of the film. Even during the war section, and the confrontation between Adrian and Frantz is shot in a monochromatic tone, here reflecting the true reality of what happened between them. And the scene at the lake when Adrian swims is idyllic in its look, suggesting the beginning of a romance, of a possible romance. When Adrian plays for the Hofmeisters, it is again in color, as if bringing life back into this home with warm memories of France. There are scenes that remind us of the futility and the absurdities of war. When Dr. Hofmeister tells Adrian that he urged Frantz to enlist, he realized he was wrong. And Adrian admits that he too was urged to fight against his will. Later on, Hofmeister admits to his friends in the tavern, if you remember, that they sent their sons to their deaths, and it was all their responsibility. We see more images of the war's result, as later, when Anna takes the train to France, we see a reflection in the window of the devastation of the bombings and the shootings in France. If you remember, you see an image in the window as she's traveling, and then she turns from the window and she sees a young man. As he turns his face, it's scarred. Again, grim reminders of what the war has done. And there is a parallel to how the Germans felt, is seen in the cafe when the French sing the Marseillaise. It's almost a reference back to another great film, Casablanca. If you remember in Casablanca, the Germans and the French square off between Marseillaise and Deutschland over alles. But here we see the nationalism rising also in France, misguided nationalism when they sing the Marseillaise and Anna is listening in to their song of revenge. When Adrian admits his lie to Anna, she is driven to commit suicide and tries to drown herself in that same lake. And in a dream is drawn to the music playing downstairs. Once again in color, do we see a young man playing the violin? Who is it in her mind? And he turns around and it's Frantz, wounded from the war. And later in black and white, when Anna goes back into the lake, after Adrian has told her the truth. And when she goes to France at the urging of Mrs. Hofmeister, she begins to see Frantz in a new light, especially when she goes to the hotel he was staying in before the war. If you remember, the cab driver says, "What is this your first time in France?" She says, "Yes." And she tells him this is where her fiancé stayed. He said, "Ah, that explains it." And we see it's basically a hotel that houses a bunch of prostitutes. And it's interesting that when she tries to find Adrian at the Paris Orchestra, she attends a performance of Scheherazade. Scheherazade, think about that. Ironically, it's a story of a woman who perpetuates 1,001 stories to stay alive. In essence, lies, constant stories to stay alive, to survive. And finally, when she finds Adrian, he seems so glad to see her. In her room, she sees the copy of Le Suicide, the painting at the Louvre, perhaps an overt reflection of Adrian's feelings about himself. And after his mother, and she's a piece of work, says that perhaps Anna came to steal their Adrian, she realizes that Adrian does not truly understand her love for him. And even though he may truly have fallen in love with Anna, he is broken. He knows the wrong he has committed and can never forget it. He cannot let himself surrender. Returning home to his mother and fiancé is a form of atonement or punishment. Although he admits that his marriage to Fanny is really one of convenience controlled by his mother, Anna tells him it's too late. It's too late. Finally, it is she who perpetuates the lie, as we are minded what the priest told her. The truth is too painful. When she writes to the Hofmeyers from France in the end, and then we see it fade to a new Anna. Her hair has changed. She's in more fashionable clothing, from her shoes on up, coming back into the Louvre, where a young man who from the back looks like Adrian. He even has a mustache. And he asks her if she also likes the painting. And as she replies, yes, it makes me want to live. It makes me want to live, echoing the sentiment that Frantz sent her in his final letter. Go on and live. And the painting is now in full color. The film is like a house of mirrors. It juxtaposes Anna and Fanny, France and Germany, Franz's house and Adrian's chateau, the patriotic anthems of the two countries. There are so many parallels to be seen in the film. It even leads us in directions that infer other possibilities. Before we know the truth about Adrian, we come to learn, he talks about these manifestations of his lie. And it plays with our perceptions, especially as we look at the imagined relationship on Adrian's part with Frantz. At times, especially when he relates how he taught him to play the violin better, one might get the feeling that it was heading in the direction of them being lovers at one point. We see Adrian's look at Frantz, how he holds him when he teaches him how to hold the violin, and how he talks about him. In the end, And it's a game the director is playing with us to divert us from what the truth really is. In the end, as I said, Anna perpetuates the lie to protect Frantz's parents. She's through with pretense as she contemplates another form of lie, art. In the last scene, she contemplates another lie, art, in Manet's suicide, Le Suicide. Art is also a lie. Art is the lie that masks the truth. And it is an attempt to make suffering bearable, but it's a noble lie, a virtuous lie, a lie that can help us live. A lie that can help us live. Manet's Le Suicide in color, the painting takes on its full force, reminding us of the tragedy between Frantz and Adrian, and of the whole morbid post-war period, where 2 million dead in France and 3 million dead in Germany, and its mutilated, psychologically traumatized survivors, all tempted by suicide. It evokes a sense of Adrian's killing a part of himself, a symbolic suicide, a metaphor. The painting becomes a metaphor for the suicide that Adrian cannot bring about. Confronted with this painting of a suicide victim, Anna has finally reached what we consider the other side of that mirror. In spite of the war, the drama, the dead, the lies, she's now grown up. She's transformed. She's surmounted the adversity, taken a long journey, and acquired a great deal of strength. Through Frantz and Adrian, she has grieved for a lost love and an imaginary love. Now maybe she can meet and love the right person. The use of the black and white was basically, on the director's part, a more economical way to create the realism in the film. He originally started shooting it in color because he loves color, but when he looked at it, he felt much better, much more comfortable in black and white. And it's true. It makes it feel like a film of its time. And it's done the high contrast is done so well. And the copy of the paintings by Friedrich, when they walk through the mountains to the lake, is beautifully rendered. The music is by a popular French composer. His name is Philippe Ramby. Is used sparingly to highlight the dramatic tension at the beginning. And then it follows along with Anna's journey. It has occasional romantic swells in the spirit of the great composers of the time, like Mahler and Debussy. If you listen to the music, it really seems to copy those themes. And concerning the performances, Paula Beer, who plays Anna, won the Best Actress Award at the Venice Film Festival for her portrayal and her transformation in the film from innocence to the realization that the world is filled with mistruths and deceptions. And finally, she comes of age. Her coming of age is nothing less than believable. And she was only 20 years old when she played the role. She was only 20 when she played this role. Pierre Ninet, who is a very popular and award-winning French actor, who I hope many of you recognize. You previously saw him last fall when I presented the film Promise at Dawn, in which he played the writer Romain Gary. He was the star of that film as well. And here he has the look of the era. He has the look of the era, and his face filled with sadness adds to the suspense of what is really going on in the film. And as the director, Francois Ozon, has stated, it was very important to me to tell this story from a German point of view, from the losing side, through the eyes of those who were humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles. So I could illustrate how Germany at that time was fertile ground for spreading nationalism. Like the German film, and I don't know how many are familiar with it, if you're not, and if you have a chance to see it, like the German film Phoenix, both movies revolve around false identities and the challenges involved in confronting a broken world. Rather than a high-stakes thriller, Frantz is a melancholic, soul-searching portrait of different characters united by a shared sense of dislocation. I mean, it truly becomes Anna's film. It is truly Anna's story. In the original, the names are changed, and the young Frenchman, we know the truth at the beginning of the film. In Broken Lullaby, the truth is revealed at the beginning because it begins with the young Frenchman in confession, telling a priest what he's done. And then he goes to the home in Germany and he perpetuates the lie, creating an idyllic Frantz. And in the end, while Ozon used much of the German sequence in this film, it changes in the ending. In the end of that film, the French character, decides to stay and replace Frantz as their son. And it ends with him playing the violin for the Hofmeisters. A much more Hollywood ending, if you will. And this one really grounds itself much more in reality. So as an adaptation, it really changes the film. And it's also done from a French director, and as he said, with the German point of view. So there you have it. Naturally, I left things open. It is a film filled with ambiguities, really takes us through that first act and convinces us of what is happening, and then pulls the rug right out from under us. It's wonderful how he does it and how he takes us in. So now I will open it up for questions, comments, and who wants to go first? Let's see, raise your little hands up there down at the bottom, and we can get started. I think we have two things in the chat. No, those are the ones Marilyn put in. Okay, Barbara Tate. You have to unmute yourself. Barbara, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
I had a lot of trouble with my computer watching this movie. It crashed every 15 minutes, so I had to
Can you
watch
send
it
to the left?
But I just thought that scene where the father stands up in the bar and talks about how it was their fault that these young men and boys had died was just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It was just so moving.
Not only that, but that's really where the film takes so much relevance, not just for World War I, for World War II and beyond. It really, takes on that relevance for us. But the whole idea of the lying and the use of a lie is something we're all too familiar with today. And I think the film bears a certain resonance in that area as well. Thank you, Barbara. Yes, that is a touching, wonderful scene. Who's next? Jackie.
Jackie.
We actually frequently thought that it felt very Hitchcocky, and we really liked that. We both liked the black and white an awful lot, and we actually both considered that he was a lover or he had killed Frantz, one or the other. So that really wasn't a surprise, but I loved that he did it in black and white. I thought that was great.
That's terrific. Yes, he is. Ozon is very much inspired by Hitchcock. He really likes his films, but he's also and in terms of cinematography, inspired by John Ford, a number of different directors. But yes, it does take on that Hitchcockian feel, especially with the music in the second half.
That's what I was going to say. It sounded so much. I actually wondered if it was Bernard Herrmann, to be honest with you.
No, Bernard Herrmann died long before this film was made.
I was going to say, I kept looking at him going, wow, doesn't that sound like? So anyway,
yes. Almost like Vertigo. There are themes in Vertigo that have that feeling. Yes, thank you. That's terrific. I'm glad you saw that reference. That's great. That's great. Okay, who's next? Anybody out there have anything they want to discuss about the film? Come on, don't be shy. Don't be shy.
Shelly?
Yeah, Wendy, go ahead.
Now, tell me about the scene in the trenches where Franz is shot by Adrian?
Well, in what aspect?
What was the director telling
Then-
you?
Well, the director, first of all, was as he comes back,
Could have gone either way.
we discuss it, you know, he discusses it, and when Frantz confesses to Anna, he says that Frantz didn't even have a bullet in the gun. If you remember, he didn't even have a bullet. He was a pacifist. And that really gets at part of the theme of the film, is the pacifism. In fact, you know, in endorsing pacifism, especially on the German side with France, the original film, didn't go over well in Europe when it was produced in 1932. It was just before, you know, Hitler came into power. But the film didn't go over well because of the pacifist nature of the film. And so he shot him not knowing that his gun wasn't loaded. But it showed the fact that it was, even though you see the face of the enemy, you kill him. You know, it was that they were so, you know, they were so trained to kill. And he couldn't, even though he was this meek man, he still did it. He still did it.
Powerful scene.
Yes, especially after the second explosion and he wakes up and he's caressing Frantz's face.
Yes.
You know, when he perpetuates the lie later on, it's almost what could have been. For Adrian, it's what could have been. You know, I could have befriended this man. I could have, who knows? I could have loved him. Is basically, you know, part of the imaginary part of the tale. So it is very powerful, very powerful. Okay.
Linda Farber has a question.
Well, that's not Linda.
Linda's sitting next to me, though.
Yeah. Linda.
Hi, Shelly.
Hi.
Hi, Linda's sitting next to me. I wanted to make a comment and a question. One, thank you for presenting this film. It was truly a fascinating film. And I thought it was interesting that even though this coming of age film ends up with her coming of age, it still ends up with a melancholy tone. She seems to get past what she needed to get past, yet at the same time, it's still in a melancholy tone. I'd like you to comment on that, as well as the color aspect of this. Second question I have for you is that in trying to ascertain why, when he flipped in the color and when it turned back to black and white, and we could think about how you had said what Linda and I said to each other, that it was representing the coming back to life, the getting back, yet it wasn't absolute, which I thought fascinating. It was not every happy time, every time where she was seemingly coming back to life didn't turn to color. The case in point that comes to mind was when they were at the ball. The ball was still in black and white, yet there was tremendous joy and life going on at that ball, and yet it was still in black and white. So can you comment on the fact of the selectivity of when he went to color, and also the melancholy coming of age at the end? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. The dealing with the end first is which is also, as I always say, you know, a film follows a course. You know, every film has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, but not necessarily in that order, because this film is also a new beginning for her. Even though it's melancholic, it's in a sense that neither Adrian, well, her realization becomes that neither Adrian nor Frantz were really right for her. And she becomes essentially an aware woman in the end. She becomes a modern woman. She's dressed, she's coming into the world, and she's also gotten beyond the idea of the world being this wonderful place, which it isn't. She's now gone through lies. She's seen what the war has done. You know, she lived in an isolated little village, and now she's seeing the world for what it is. The world is unmasked. Yet she's also seen art. She's also been exposed at the Louvre. She's seen the art, and it's attracted her. Even the painting of the suicide, because it represents all of that mask, all of those lies. And there is a certain melancholy, because it's a melancholy for the world itself, not just for her. It's the realization that war, they've gotten through a war, and yet we've seen nationalism on both sides starting to rear its ugly head again. And this is going to be the way of the world. We fortunately look back. It's not the time of the film, but we know the history that happens after. And I think Ozone is also getting a lot of noise. I'm sorry. That Ozone is also making us aware of the reality to come in that sense. It's ironic that he brings the painting at the end alive in color. Now, his choice of scenes, really all the scenes of color only pertain to the immediate characters. They pertain to Anna and Adrian when they're first going into the mountains, because it's breathing life into Anna. And it's breathing a seeming romance, what looks like could be a romance between her and Adrian. When
Shelly,
You muted Shelly.
I'm sorry, wait a minute, Shelly, unmute. I accidentally.
I'm sorry, where did you lose me?
Trying to get the other noise out, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. Where did I get lost here? Okay, anyway, it's breathing the color scenes, the references to color scenes. He was trying to really emphasize more of what was happening with those immediate characters, with Frantz, with Anna, and the Hofmeisters, that it pertains only to them. So the scene at the ball, even though it's joy, it's really not. It doesn't pertain to Frantz so much. It pertains to what's happening between the two of them, because even in the end, when she comes to France and she finds him, that doesn't turn to color. That those scenes at the chateau and everything else, they're not in color. They're still in black and white. They're still sort of the reality of what's happening. So it's also dealing with some of the non-reality, the color or the disillusionment or the creation of an illusion for us is what he's dealing with here. I know it gets complicated at times, but that's really where he was going with the color in the film. He was, he thought he really, because he's drawn to color as a director, he felt he had to put it into the film. And he used these specific moments to put it in. I mean, when she comes downstairs during her fever dream and sees that it's Frantz playing the violin, he turns around and he's wounded. It is that unhappy moment. It's now the truth. He's dead. He's dead. And she's dealing with that truth, with that illusion that he's alive at that moment. It all plays with our minds and our perceptions. He's playing around. He's playing a little game with us, with the color, to draw us in and make us feel like, okay, where's the reality? Where's the illusion? Which he plays with during the film a lot. So I hope that answers your questions. And
Yes.
Anything else? Thank you. Okay, Linda. You gotta unmute, Linda. There you go. I think you got it. No?
Yeah.
Hit your space bar.
Unmute. I got it.
There
If
you
I-
go.
give it to me.
Okay.
Okay. I kind of think it was important though to, if I understood correctly, he didn't go there to lie. He kind of got backed into that. I think he was very courageous to go and he was going to face the music, and he tried to talk to the doctor first. And then he tried, but they were all so eager. So they started the lie. Now he perpetuated it, of course. But I think he just, like, in the panic of the moment, and, you know, it became worse and worse as they thought that he was a, you know, a good guy, and he was there trying to ask for forgiveness and admit, you know. So I felt much differently about him knowing that than I would have if he just went there, you know, to not face the music, to just to you know, try to see what the deal was and befriend them. So I thought he was a very sympathetic character.
Yeah, in retrospect, you're right. But what happens, the reason he does perpetuate the lie is because he's too weak to admit it. He's broken. He just is not capable. He doesn't want to, you know, he's afraid. He's you know, he's, as I said, he's broken. He doesn't really know. And it's easy if it becomes easier for him to perpetuate the lie because it makes them feel good. It makes them feel good.
But I think he also feels for them, and he's, you know,
yes,
you're stuck between a rock and a hard place there.
Yeah, he almost becomes, you know, for them, he becomes the son they lost.
Right.
You know, because he's this good-looking young man. He plays the violin. I mean, he has all these attributes, and as he's telling the lie, you know, yes, he even says that they hung out in France together. They went to the museum. They looked at the paintings. You know, all of these things. You know, this story that he concocts, and they buy into it. And when he plays the violin, they buy into it even more. I mean, it just puts them in that place, you know. But yet he creates this ideal of Frantz that also isn't real. You know, and that they will buy into. So it's very interesting, you know, how the human dynamic that's played around with here, because he is that convincing. He is that convincing. But yes, he's a very sympathetic character. But in all, he's broke. He's a broken man, and he represents that brokenness of World War I, or of any war. I mean, you know,
and I think it made him worse when he created this whole fictional Frantz in his mind too. Then he's, I think, getting worse by the minute. His guilt is getting worse and worse, because now he's really, really real to him. Yeah.
I mean, all he really wanted was forgiveness, but he couldn't. You know, he realized that, as he says at the end to her, you know, after she meets Fanny and everything else, he says to her, you know, it's all I wanted. He says, but this is going to stay with me the rest of my life. It's going to live with me. It lives within me. Susan Metch.
Yeah, I thought that he was, in a way, the same thing Linda said. He came originally to beg for forgiveness, but when he saw how broken the family was and how sad and the whole aura, he just had to make them feel better. And in essence, he was making himself, of course, feel better. But it was an incredible thing. One thing I noticed, there wasn't a lot of dialogue, you know, between them. Maybe it was me. They didn't have the very long, involved conversations, and they played a lot with the mood of the film, with the black and white, which I really thought was wonderful. And everything everybody said was really true. It was the nationalism coming through. And once he got into the family dynamic, because she was really in a cocoon at that point. She was with his parents, and she couldn't leave, and she was devastated by his loss. And then I think in general that it's easy to idolize somebody, to make them bigger than they are when they're not there. And he helped with the whole situation, and it really got out of control. So when he really had to leave, and then she really thought, well, maybe I better follow him, because I really feel something for him. But she wasn't feeling for him. She was feeling for her loss and her missing of him. So I thought it was a beautiful movie. It really was. And it was very well played. And there's so much more to it than the initial looking at it.
Absolutely. I mean, I always recommend, and Marilyn answers the question, you know, you should always see a film at least twice.
At least.
The first time, the first time you watch a film, the second time you see it, and that would happen here too. The interesting thing, you know, what you're saying is so right. Is as far as dialogue is concerned, yes, it's short sentences. It's just little interchanges, because as I've always said, you know, and Ozon is also a practitioner of this, is that dialogue is the enemy of the cinema, because it's the visual that we're interested in. And this is really an expressionistic film. You know, we see it in their faces, in the little subtleties of their actions. You know, it tells the story. It goes back to classic filmmaking. This is classic filmmaking, and it is the essence of it all. So yes, and you know, as far as the again, the lie and what compounds the lie is also the way he's treated by the others in the village. You know, he goes back to his hotel room and he opens up that little package, and it's a coffin meant for him. You know, again, it's that whole idea of the Frenchman, and they call him, you know, the Frenchman. It's all, you know, all embedded in that, which makes him now have to do what he does. You know, it is complicated, but it's also simplified by how we look at the film. Thank you, Susan. Marilyn.
I thought that the way, am I on mute? No, I thought the way the director dealt with showing how guilt defines people, and I thought that was he did it with Adrian, who was, you know, absorbed with guilt, and also the German fathers who sent their boys to war, and in a lot of cases, you know, they sort of couldn't forgive themselves, and how it drove them crazy. And it's some of them. I mean, it's any wars like that, really, right?
Yeah, well, guilt is a human characteristic. It's not, you know, it's not a flaw necessarily. It's more of a characteristic that we all carry. You know, every character in the film is guilty of something. Even when we see them in the film, you know, the only one that's not guilty is Mrs. Hofmeister. You know, she is the counterpoint to Adrian's mother. You know, she is facing life. She smiles. She's wonderful. She's a wonderful character. And just as I said, the mirror opposite of Adrian's mother, who's controlling. But you know, Hofmeister himself is guilty of rejecting Adrian at first, and you know, he feels the guilt. He also feels the guilt of what he did to his son by urging him to enlist. Kreutz is guilty, you know, of his nationalistic tendencies. Anna is guilty. Anna is guilty of perpetuating a lie. You know, even when she goes to confess, you know, and it's funny in this film, the priest absolves her, you know, saying that sometimes a lie, you know, is you know, masks the pain of the truth. And in this case, she's doing a good thing. You know, but everybody is guilty. We're all guilty of something, you know, in life. It becomes a characteristic more than anything else. So, but yes, thank you. Rhonda.
Sorry, it took a while to unmute. I
That's all
thought
right.
one of the turning points of the movie was when Anna gets to Adrian's home, and she seems so optimistic. I mean, I think maybe Adrian was filling the void of Frantz, but at that moment, I think she felt that she loved him and was looking forward to this visit and rekindling their relationship. And the moment that I think it was Franz puts his hand on Fanny, on her shoulder, it just really let me down. I felt so disappointed that, you know, that he already had something going. And it appeared that Fanny knew that Adrian felt for Anna too, but I was really sad at that moment. But then I said, no, I don't want Adrian to go back to Anna because Fanny was such a lovable person also, character in the movie. So for me, that was a big turning point in the movie.
That's an interesting observation. I certainly didn't want him to go back to Anna because he was broken. Anna could do better. I mean, she was really coming of age, so to speak, and she was realizing, what the world has to offer in the end. And Fanny was also a bit broken. She lost her brother in the war. And this was an arranged situation. The mother was controlling this. Even Adrian admits, he knew her since childhood, but I don't think, he was necessarily looking at marriage. And his mother was saying this is basically a marriage of convenience, of these two families. And I love it though, when the mother says to her, you're tormenting my son. Why did you come here? You're tormenting my son. And she looks her straight in the eye and she says, I'm not tormenting your son. Frantz is. She develops her strength in this film. And also Fanny is almost a mirror again of Anna. Franny is the world-wise woman at this point. She gives the dress. She's the modern woman, so to speak, the modern French woman. And Anna feels like the country bumpkin. She's come into this situation and she sees, she is a little uncomfortable, and especially when she's playing the piano and realizes what's coming on here, and stops and runs away, which is at the point when the mother says perhaps she's here to steal our Adrian. It was an interesting scene, and we see her at the table when they're talking about the end of the war, and asking Anna, where were you in France during the war? She says, no, I was in Germany. She's told not to pry too much, the other woman. But anyway, it's very interesting, the dynamic, because this film is dealing with these feelings between France and Germany, as well as Anna's coming of age and Adrian's brokenness. All of these themes playing around in the film, circling these characters. I'll get to you in a moment, Nora. Dora has a hand up first. Go ahead, Dora.
No, now that you mention it, Anna feels several times as an outsider. When she was in the train, she realizes that this is not the place for her, that everybody is different. And then when she goes to Paris, and then she finally finds him and looks at the house and everything, and then she realizes also that she's an outsider. But at the end of the movie, she starts to realize that she's not but she's different, that she's getting to be different, and accepting the situation she is in. And she's able to say this big lie to her, not her in-laws, because they're not her in-laws anymore, but they're the people that really love her. And then she can make up this real lie, very complicated lie that was so satisfying for them that she's finally happy. And maybe she's on the way to being happy, finally.
Yes, I agree. And yes, you're absolutely right. She is feeling like an outside. I mean, she's crossing a border. The interesting thing about Anna, from a cinematic point of view, is when she's in the village, she walks a pattern. She circles the town. If you remember at the beginning, she goes to the market. She looks in the store. She walks up the hill to the cemetery. She goes back to the house, or she goes to the hotel. We follow. She's got a short journey, but we're following her, and she's in constant movement. And she's an orphan. So she has no real attachment to that world eventually. She is an outsider when she's crossing the border from Germany to France. Even the train conductor says, "Why are you going to France? You're visiting a prisoner." Remember, he says to her, "You seeing a prisoner?"
Right.
No. So she's treated like, an enemy. She's treated like an enemy. And yet when she comes in and she realizes, though, there's more to this world than she thought. And she becomes comfortable at the end, knowing, because she has no other attachment except the Hofmeisters, who she's created the myth for, or perpetuates the myth for. So she's going out into the world. She is going out into the world. And now she will become part of that world. She will become part of that world. She no longer will be the other. She will now be part of the world. So terrific. Thank you. Thank you. Nora.
Adrian and Anna spoke, and he didn't know anything about Anna. He didn't know when Anna and Franz got engaged, where they met. And Anna wasn't suspicious at all. I was suspicious watching. I knew he wasn't being honest at that point. And I guess maybe it's that point where she's coming of age, because at that point she was a naive young girl. And maybe that was part of the coming of age, where she realized things after she went on the taxi ride and came to the hotel where her fiance was. But I was wondering how you felt about when she didn't know anything that was going on, that he didn't know anything about Franz's life with Anna.
Well, what he did know was he saw the letters. He saw the letter. The last letter he was sending to Anna, which was telling her to live, and he was basically building it on that. So he knew that they were close. He didn't know if she was going to marry him or whatever it was. I mean, he begins to learn this through, the family and everything else. So it's really, it really is dynamic of him, being capable of picking up on things. And because he had this foreknowledge of the letter, I mean, he memorized the letter. He was so obsessed that he memorized that letter. Almost as if he was, that Frantz became his alter ego. Frantz became his alter ego in a way. He was now coming to live, as I said, in the original version, he becomes Frantz, or the character Frantz at the end of that film. Here too, it's almost like the director's playing with us. Is that where he's going? Is that he's going to take over his life? No, but I think he was aware, he becomes more aware of how Anna felt about Frantz as they feed. And remember, it's Anna that requests that the Hofmeisters open their home to him. At first he's rejected, and she's the one that brings him back in. So I think it becomes just something that the relationship builds, and it's something that she, being so naive and innocent, as you say, she follows along. I mean, and she looks at Adrian, she sees his wounds at the lake when he goes swimming. She's beginning to feel for him. And we think we know where this is going, but we don't. And that's the beauty of the film. Okay, Ed, and then Linda again. Ed. No? Oh, see the chat message. Okay, let's see. Sorry. Okay. Brave. He was desperate for relief. Yes. Might the name Hofmeister be a nod to the German 18th century composer and music publisher Franz Anton Hofmeister? It might be. I don't know. That's a good question. He never brings it up in his notes. When they talk about the names. The women are the survivors, the mothers, Fanny, Anna, deal with the reality. Yes, because, they are the ones that'll have to pick up the pieces after the war. Women are always the ones that pick up the pieces after the war. And I think it's here too. It's here too. So, Linda, you had your hand up, and then Maurice, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say that sometimes when you suffer a really great loss, then you gravitate towards someone else that is feeling that loss the same way. And so I think that was a lot of her attraction to him, is not necessarily that she was falling in love with him, but he was so obviously distressed about Franz's death also. And I think that was the bond more than anything, was just that, you know, he was suffering and she was suffering and over the same, you know, thing. And then I think that's why she got so wrapped up so quickly in him, as opposed to just, oh, I'm over the guy, I can fall in love with this one. And so then I felt like when she, you know, found out at the end there, that's why she was able to stay in France and recover, is that she saw that Frantz, I mean, not that the other fellow, not Frantz, I forget his name now. But anyway,
Adrian.
Yeah, Adrian, that he was going to be okay. He had a, you know, a fiance, everything was fine. And then she was able to recover also. I think she was a really compassionate, you know, loving person. And so she not only felt her own pain, but she was really internalizing his.
Well, I don't, the only part I disagree with is I don't think she thought he was going to be okay.
No?
No, he was broken. He was broken.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything is going to repair him at that point. And I think she realizes that too, you know, especially if you remember, she looks at him and she says, you just don't understand. He didn't even get an inkling of how much she cared about him. And she looks at him and she says, you really don't understand. And then finally says it's too late. When he kisses her at the station, he gives her a passionate kiss. But she says, it's too late. It's too late. And she realizes that. And neither Frantz nor he were probably right for her, or would have been right for her. And I think that she's now moved on. I think there was an inkling that she, you know, she sees him. Yes, as you say, you're drawn to someone else who suffers in the same ways. And she was drawn to him at first for that reason. But I think she also would, as the thing grew, and as the Hofmeisters saw him, she was seeing it too. And if you remember, the Hofmeisters say, you got us through this. You helped us through this. Now it's our turn to help you. And she urges her to go to France to find him because they loved him. They wound up loving him. And she felt almost an obligation to go back, even though she knows the truth, to go back, because she realizes that he was looking for forgiveness and wanted to forgive him. I mean, she even makes up the fact that the Hofmeisters forgave him. They never knew the truth. They will never know the truth. You know, is really what happens here, but she carries that with her. She carries that with her. But interesting takes. Thank you. Maurice.
Just a word about the painting. Manet's painting plays such a paramount role in the movie. We haven't spoken about the painting. The painting, Suicide, one would think was a large painting, but it was actually very small. He painted it in 1877, and the whole painting, the oil on canvas, is 15 by 18 inches. And I was surprised to learn that this painting was that size. The role of suicide in this film, as manifested by this painting of this man who just shot himself with the gun, the revolver still in his hand. Do you have any comments about the role of suicide in this film? Several people wanted to commit suicide and actually did commit suicide in the film.
Who committed suicide? No, nobody. She tries to commit suicide.
She did.
Yeah, she tries. She attempts it, but fails, fortunately.
Right.
So no one really. Adrian commits a symbolic suicide. Obviously, is talking about the painting at the Louvre. You know, we saw the Manet paintings at the Louvre, and this was a lesser work of Manet. This is not a popular part of his canon. But the fact is that he talks about it to them, you know, about them going to the Louvre and looking at the Manets. that, and the fact that it's in his room or in one of the rooms in the chateau, was that it was basically a metaphor for his wanting to commit suicide, his wanting to die over what he did, but he doesn't really want to die. And it also is a metaphor for the result of the war, of how many broken people wanted to kill themselves because they were lost. I mean, this was a lost generation. It's the story of the painting was that an assistant of Manet's had committed suicide several months before he did the painting, and it was purported that's what he was talking about in the painting. Nobody really knows, but it's also the fact that the man is lying there with the gun, and it's called Le Suicide. And the fact is, though, is it an ambiguous painting? Did the man really shoot himself because the gun is still in his hand? Or, what really is happening there? But yet the painting is an important, an integral symbol in the film. It's a symbol for war itself. War is suicide. The idea of Anna trying to commit suicide, the fact that he commits a metaphorical suicide with the paint by the use of the painting, but yet it's art. It's art. It's a work of art, and it's a work of art that masks the truth. It's ironic in the end because she says of the painting, "It makes me want to live. It makes me want to live." So it's an ironic statement at the end of the film. A wonderfully ironic statement at the end of the film. So I hope that sort of covers most of it for you. And I thank you for bringing it up again. Okay.
I guess one more and then we'll call it off.
Yes. Okay.
Then we
Yeah.
have one more. Is there one more? Here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here. Yes. Here it is.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment also on the painting that the metaphor can also be extended to Germany. Germany had a large responsibility for starting World War I, and the suicide could also be metaphoric for the war itself in terms of Germany.
Okay.
Oh, without question. Not only that, but let's extend it even further. Germany is suicidal. Germany will start another war, which is suicidal, which will kill many more people. So, yes, it's a comment on war itself, but certainly in this case, yes, part of it is the idea that Germany is entering into a suicidal pact, moving forward. So the film resonates a great deal on so many levels. It just really does resonate. It should resonate with all of us. But it's revealing. I mean, it answers all the things I talk about with film. It's relevant, it's revelatory, and it's resonant. And it's revelatory in how it reveals itself. It's a very revealing film, not just on a human level, but also in how the director plays with us and reveals things during the film, which is the way a film should be. It should peel back itself like an onion. And reveal all these layers. So it does it very well. So I'm glad you all enjoyed the film, and I will look forward to seeing you next month. Sweet Bean is a wonderful, a little more uplifting film, but it's a very humane tale. It comes to us from a woman director, Naomi Kawase. Who I will tell you more about next month. But this is a very human story that explores how disparate lives can impact one another. It is the story of a manager of a Japanese bean cake stall, which brings us to the idea of Sweet Bean, who is confronted by an odd yet sympathetic elderly woman looking for work. And she turns his little Sweet Bean stand and his life into a magical situation. and it deals with ambiguity. It deals with human interaction. And it's a wonderful, wonderful story that I'm sure, or at least I hope you will love as much as I do. So I look forward to seeing you next month for Sweet Bean. And I thank
Remember
you.
July 11th.
Yes, July 11th. And I thank you all. Great discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Sensational. Just wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Wendy.
I am the recording.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Shelley.
See
Okay,
you soon.
recording should be.